In this video, I will be talking about a few things, how to create a new variable, how to split columns. So if you have data in one column, but you want to split it for some reason into different columns. Also how to replace values in your columns or in your data set. And I will also deal with how to remove columns. So if you want to delete some of your columns in your data set, and how to copy your data, be it copying data from a column or copying the whole data set you're working with. So I still have Power BI opened from the previous session on filtering and sorting. So I also still have these two data sets loaded, so the exam scores data set and the timeline example data set. If you want to save something in Power BI, so if you're working with a specific data set and you'd like to save what you have done, you can just do that. Okay, we first have to apply what we're doing here, so we just need to close and apply, and then you can save your data here. You can just say save as, and I save it as digital methods data wrangling .pbx. So here that's the Power BI extension, so to indicate that it's a Power BI file. So if you save it, you can load it for later use, and it will remember, of course, what your data is, and also, well, given that you didn't remove the data files from their location, they were stored in the first place. Okay, so let's talk now about creating a new variable. Let's go back to the Power Query editor, and let's see at the exam scores file. Now suppose that I want to create a new variable based on the score on the digital methods exam here. So this is a very detailed score with a lot of numbers after the comma, but actually I only want to know whether a student has passed the exam or not. So if a student, so this is a conditional column or a condition I want to impose for the new column. So if a student has a score of 10 or more, the student has passed the exam. However, if a student has less than 10, the student failed the exam. So now there's different ways to create new columns. To do so, we first go to transform. So that's here. No, I'm wrong. Of course, we go to add column. That would be more sensible to do. So there's a tab for that. So if you go to add column, you can see there's different options here. What you will be using most probably is either custom column, which will be somewhat similar to what you can use in SPSS, for instance. And there's also the option to create a conditional column if there's a certain condition. And as I pointed out before, we do have a condition. So if a number or the score is higher than something, it's a pass, else it's a fail. So that's a conditional column. So if we click on that, you see that there's different options here. So we can name the new column. So let's name it pass, fail. And now you can determine the condition. So if, and the column name here is if the score on the digital methods exam is greater than or equal to some value, so 10, then pass. Okay. else. So if it's not greater or equal to 10, so else fail. So it's as easy as that. So let's click OK and see what happens. And here you can see the new variable name with the values pass or fail. So fail is an 8, 7. So this seems to make sense. Another fail. This is pass, 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 pass. Okay. So this is a conditional new column. We could also create a custom column. I'll show you right away. So let's see if we can take a mean score or something like that. So create a new column that is the, well, let's say the sum of both these columns. So that would be a number, since these are scores on 20, this should be a total on 40. So this is just a custom column, which you can click here. And this gives you a window that is actually not that different from what you can see in SPSS. So you can add a new column name. So let's name that total sum. And what you see here is just the columns in your data set where you can click on. So it's as simple as that. So what we want to do is to have the sum of the mean score for the second bachelor and the score on the digital methods exam. So we go here, so score, mean score on second bachelor courses, you double click. So it adds the variable itself. Since we want to add, it's probably just a sum, so a plus, and then the score on the digital methods exam. So in Power BI automatically checks whether you're making some kind of error in your syntax, and this seems to be okay at first glance. So this should be a sum of both those scores. So let's see what happens. This seems to be correct. Of course, if we wanted to take the mean of these two scores, we could still change what we did in this window, of course, as you guys know already. So we can go back and do something probably like this. So now we have the mean of those two columns. So that was for creating a new variable. Splitting columns might be most interesting to show you guys the IMDb example we did in one of the practicals. So IMDb top 250. So this is the IMDb website with the top 250 movies, and so let's read them in Power BI. So we copy paste the URL, which we did in one of the practicals when I could meet you guys in a physical condition. So we close and apply this, and we get data. Oops, a little bit too fast from the web. And we paste the URL. So here you have it. So it loads the data more or less neatly into Power BI. So let's transform it. So what we already see here is in the first place, so these are the scores, so from 1 to and up until 250, but they are together with the title, so it's called rank and title, but actually it would be more common sense to split the rank from the title. So that's something we can consider doing. And also this column seems to be empty, so we probably want to delete that too. And I think actually your rating is also something I'd like to delete. Okay, so let's get started. So the easiest thing is to just delete columns. So if you just select this column, if you click on it or click on this one and you press delete, you delete the column, right? So, or you can press the right mouse button and click on remove and it will remove the column. So we can undo that. So you're back, just select one column or two columns if you press and hold the control button and press delete. So good riddance, because we didn't need these columns. Actually, this column is empty too, so let's delete it too. So of course, now we want to split the column here. How do we do that? Well, that's actually rather straightforward. Also in the Home tab, you have the option to split a column. So let's click on that. So now you have to think how we might approach this best. Should we split it by a delimiter, by the number of characters, by positions, lowercase to uppercase, uppercase to lowercase, digit to non-digit, and non-digit to digit? Well, I'd say in most of the cases, you would either try to split a column by a delimiter or maybe by the number of characters. The reason why we can't do this by the number of characters is we could say like it's a number and after that it's a dot. So that needs to be split from the text from the title. But as numbers can have either 1, 2, or 3 digits, so from 1 to 9 and then from 10 to 99 and so on. This probably isn't the best approach. So we want to split this column by delimiter and probably the dot here. Oops. The dot after each of these numbers. We could say that is a delimiter, so we want to split this column based on the dot. And of course, this has the advantage that the dot will just disappear because you were telling Power BI that is the delimiter. So you get rid of the delimiter when you split a column. One of the downsides might be that there is in some movie title a dot. So I don't see it at the moment, but it's a possibility that in one of the movie titles there would be a dot, and then you have to be careful that you're not splitting it into more than one column. And this is something that Power BI allows us to do. So let's just select this column and press on split column by delimiter. So then you have a few options. So select or enter the delimiter. It gives you some options to split on. It actually already suggests this round bracket, but we don't want to do that. And then you have the option to split at the leftmost delimiter, the rightmost delimiter, or each occurrence of the delimiter. Now, Power BI automatically selects each occurrence of the delimiter. Of course, we don't want to do that. We want to split on the leftmost delimiter because it has to split only at the first dot it encounters. So we also need to change that from these round brackets to a dot. So in the advanced options, then you can choose between splitting in a new column or creating a new row. In this case, of course, we want to create a new column and not a new row. The quote character is something that is useful when you're dealing with specific texts that are enclosed between quote characters. So we don't need to do that now. A special character would, for instance, be a tab or a carriage return, a line feed, non-breaking space. So you could split this column based on, for instance, the first white space you encounter. So actually we could do that, but then we wouldn't get rid of the dot. So the advantage of splitting on the dot is that we lose it in our new column. So let's see, we've split on the dot, leftmost into a new column. Well, we don't have a quote character, so but it doesn't matter what we do here. So let's press OK and see what happens. So there you have it. So we have a new column with the rank, and this is now only the title. So that's for splitting a column. Another thing we might want to do is, for instance, replace a value in Power BI. Let's see if there's something interesting to replace here. Not really. So what we might do is, for instance, replace the comma with a dot. So a decimal point. So again, this is something you can find here in the Home tab, is just replace values. So if you click on that, so I made a mistake here, well, not really a mistake, but I didn't select the correct column, so I still have this column selected. So if I would now say I want to replace a comma with a dot, he's giving an error because he doesn't find any dots. Moreover, because it's a numeric data format, it will only change the number. So probably if I want to change this column, he will also he won't allow me to do it. So value to find comma. Nope. So it has to be a numeric value. So we can do two things. We can either change this to text and then replace the value. So a comma to a dot. Now there's no problem at all to do that. So if we press OK, we have replaced the dot or the comma with a dot. In timeline example, for instance, if you wanted to remove all the @ signs, for some reason you could do it the same. So value to find would be the @ sign, and we replace it with nothing. So if we press OK, the @ signs in your text are all removed. So that's it for replacing values. Maybe still another example for splitting columns. We might want to split the date from the time. So let's try and do that. So we select this column, we split it by a delimiter. So, and then I would say let's split on a special, and that this is a non-breaking space. So, and you see that he fills out the code for a non-breaking space. We want to split on each occurrence of the delimiter, but it shouldn't matter because there's probably only one. Again, we want to split into columns, and it will be 2 columns. We don't have a code character, so this isn't relevant. So let's see what happens. Nothing happens. So why is that? Doesn't seem, or it does seem to have a white space. So let's try it like this. Yeah, so this happens. So what I did was, for some reason, he doesn't want me to split the column by telling him to look for a non-breaking space. So what I did was just do one space in the delimiter option and then press OK. So, and this does work. So now we have split the date and the time. So there's only one thing left to talk about, that is how to copy data more often than not, and you will see that happening, for instance, if you want to do grouping functions or similar things. You sometimes want to have a copy of the data set you have now, because it might be you want to perform an operation on this data set, but you also want to perform another operation that is different compared to the previous one. So you would need 2 data sets to compare these operations. So you have your data sets here in the query editor, and you can right click on them and copy and then paste. So for instance, imagine that I only wanted to have a data set here with gender and the total sum of the scores to do some operations on, but that I also wanted to keep the complete data set to do some other operations on. I can just copy and paste it. So Control C, Control V also works, and it's always best then to rename it to something else. So exam scores digit methods for grouping, for instance, and for joining. These are operations I will talk about in a different video. So I think I covered everything that was needed for this video. So I showed you guys how to create a new variable, whether it's conditional or whether it's based on some kind of operation between different columns. I've talked about how to split columns, how to replace values in columns, how to remove those columns, and how to copy data.